It's time to continue on with our evaluating of algebraic expressions. Once again, algebraic just means that it's a math problem with at least one letter in it, right? We call that a variable. And the expression means it's a math problem that doesn't have an answer. So we're going to be plugging in the information. Once again, we call that substituting. Hopefully you have that note, just so you can remind yourself what that means. Substituting in information or values for each of our variables, and then following the order of operations in order to solve. In this first problem that we're going to look at together, it's geometry, and we haven't done geometry yet. But it tells us that the expression of 1/2 times a times b plus c can be used to find the area of the trapezoid. And generally what I have happening is sixth graders are going to be going, I don't know what to do. And they just kind of shut off their brains because they get very frustrated. And please understand that the moment you get frustrated, you can't think, right? So we're going to just ignore all that stuff that they're showing us. We're going to try to take some deep breaths, as like Mrs. Klein had showed us at the beginning of the year, kind of relax, even ignore the image. Just focus in on the math itself. And I promise if you can do that and keep your emotions under control, you're going to be just fine in solving this math problem. All we have is 1/2 times a times, in parentheses, b plus c. And I know that I have three values. All I'm going to do is take the expression and I'm going to solve the answer. That's all I'm doing. Ignore all of the other stuff, relax, breathe, and just plug in the information and solve. I promise you'll be just fine. It doesn't matter what we're doing with the shape or anything else. What matters is that you can do the math, and I know that you can. So we're going to plug in the information. I know that A is equal to 9.8, that B is equal to 12, and C is equal to 7. So I begin to plug that in, and I have 1/2. Now, 1/2 A, once again, that's a term, because that's multiplication, and that's 1/2 times A. So I got to remember that when I'm changing and plugging in or substituting my values in for my variables, that I put in that math that's being shown. So add that multiplication sign and then fill in A with 9.8. Then I'm going to have to bring down my parentheses. B, they tell me is 12, so I write a 12. I bring down my addition sign. And then I have C, and they tell me that's 7, so I'm going to add my 7 and close up my parentheses. Now, I can't multiply fractions and decimals, so I'm just going to change my fraction into a decimal, because having to work with 9.8 as a fraction, which then is actually a mixed number, I have to change into an improper fraction to do the math, and there's just a lot more steps doing that than just changing 1/2 into a decimal. If you don't know off the top of your head that 1/2 is 0.5, it's okay. You would just take your handy dandy calculator and type in 1 divided by 2 equals, and you're going to see that it is 0.5. Now I have to bring everything else down, right? So I'm just repeating my math problem so that now that it's complete, I can follow my order of operations. If I follow the order of operations, I'm going to do just fine when it comes to solving this problem. So I have, as per several extra presents, absolute values, square roots, exponent, and parentheses. I only have one of those. I have parentheses. So I'm going to do my parentheses first. When I add 12 plus 7, I get 19. Now I have to bring everything else down and repeat my math problem. Notice I'm keeping those parentheses because that parentheses is no longer, hey, you have to do this math. It is telling me, well, 9.8 was touching the parentheses, so now that's a math problem that I have to keep the parentheses for. So when I look at it, once again, a number touching parentheses is multiplication. And I know my next step is to multiply from left to right. So I have 5/10 or 0.5 times 9.8 times 19. I need to go from left to right. So I'm going to multiply my 0.5 or 5/10 times 9.8 or 9 and 8 tenths. I can stack it on my paper and show step by step. 5 times 4 is 40. I carry my addition of 4, and 5 times 9 is 45 plus 4 is 49. When I look at my math problem, once again, I don't just drop my decimal down, it's multiplication. So I count my decimal positions. And then I move from right to left 2 times and add my decimal. So I get 4.9. Or you could just do your calculator. Well, if I can just do my calculator, Mr. Parker, then why in the world did you just show me how to do that? Because I will always review how to multiply, how to divide, how to add, to subtract, decimals, fractions, and everything else, just so we have it in our mind, because it's not our current lesson, but it is things we do need to know. I could just type it into my calculator, though. So I would take the 9.8 times the 0.5. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. And when I hit equals, then I'm going to get 4.9, which is what we said it was. All right, so I have 4.9. Now I bring down those parentheses and I bring the 19 down, because once again, that means to multiply. So if I just take my answer of 4.9 and multiply by 19, and then I find out that that is equal to 93.1. All right, well, 93.1 what? So if I know I have 93.1, then that's the only time I really need to look back at my shape, right? So the shape shows me then if I have a measurement that I'm measuring in inches. The problem told me I was finding the area, or evaluating or solving for area. And area is always going to have a squared label. So you'll see that in your book, they tell you that it has a label of squared inches. That's actually a key idea that if you don't remember from 5th grade, you might write that down on the inside back cover where the formulas are for area, and write yourself a note that anytime you're doing area, always and forever, your label has to be squared, right? That's a 5th grade standard, but I know some of you didn't get that. We're going to go more into it because we haven't even started geometry. They just kind of threw that one in there at us, kind of like they did with perimeter, and we hadn't reviewed what perimeter meant. Excuse me. So please don't find yourself frustrated and shut yourself down, right? Because when your reptilian brain takes over, that's when you're really frustrated at your fight or flight emotions, that you can't think and process, right? So Mrs. Klein had showed us at the very beginning of the year, if we breathe, we relax, we take a couple of deep breaths, especially when we're in a situation like math where we look at it, it seems overwhelming. I promise I've taught you how to do all of this. So if I ignore all of the busy work, if I ignore the shape, and I ignore all the stuff that I find overwhelming, and I just focus in on the math, then I can do it. And if you have trouble when it seems really overwhelming and you can't figure out what the key components are, please ask me. We're going to work through one so you know how to do it. But being able to relax and believe in yourself, that's when you can think clearly about what it is you're trying to do. All right, let's move on. So we're going to do this one together. I'm not going to have you do any of the checks on your own, because I really want to review these, because there are a couple of them you have to do in your homework assignment, and I want you to know the solid steps. Once again, if I go too fast, then please just write down the notes, fill in your book, make sure it looks like what mine does, and then go back and re-watch it and listen and engage to what I'm saying, so that you know how to do it and you understand it, because that's the key. So reading it to you, it says the expression of 1/2 times A times B plus C can be used to find the area of the trapezoid. That sounds very familiar. What is the area of the trapezoid when A is equal to 3.7, or 3 7/10, B is equal to 6.4, and C is equal to 3.6? Well, once again, I know I'm going to use a formula, and it says I want to find the area of the trapezoid, but if I ignore all the stuff that gets confusing and I realize that all it's asking me to do, or well, all it's asking me is what is the answer when I have that formula or I have that algebraic expression and I know the values of my variables. I don't even need to know the shape for right now. So if I just take my 3 pieces of information and plug them in to my algebraic expression, I can do this math. So I'm going to keep the 1/2. I know once again that a coefficient, a number, with a variable, a letter, means multiplying. So when I go to plug in my information or substitute my information, I need to include that multiplication sign. A is equal to 3.7, they tell me. Now I have my parentheses, and in my parentheses, I have b, 6 4/10, plus the 3 6/10, ending my parentheses. All right, so now I'm going to, well, once again, I have that 1/2 at the beginning, right? So let's change that to the 0.5 and then repeat everything. That way I have a complete math problem that I can do, especially when my other three numbers are decimals. I want to change that 1/2 into decimals. All right, so then when I go through my order of operations, I have inside my parentheses, right? Absolute value, square root, exponents, parentheses. So when I do my parentheses, I get 6.4 plus 3.6 is 10. So then I bring everything else down. Once again, keeping those parentheses is important because now it's telling me that that's part of a math problem. Now I'm going to go again from left to right. So on my handy dandy calculator, I type in 0.5 times 3.7, or I can type in 3.7 times 0.5. It's still going to give me the same answer. So I end up with 1.85. And that's touching the parentheses and the 10 inside. And once again, that means multiplication. So 1.85 times 10. The shortcut is you can just move your decimal to the right one time since you're multiplying by 10. But if you don't know the shortcut, then just type it into your calculator, 1.85 times 10, you get 18.5. Now, when I look at the 18.5, oh, just remember that means multiplication. When I get to 18.5, this was a word problem, and I was finding a measurement of something, so I have to look at the measurements that they give me. So I see that they have centimeters, and this is area according to the original problem. So once again, that key idea, hopefully you did write it in the back of your book, the area always has to have a squared label. So I'm going to put centimeters with the power of 2, and that says square centimeters. Some people get kind of confused where the 2 goes because we say squared before we say the centimeters, even though the superscript of 2 goes after it. And if that does confuse you, just put SQCM, which also is the abbreviation for squared centimeters. So we're going to do 2 more that are word problems before I give you time to work on your assignment. So I've been in a couple of meetings recently with Mrs. Gallagher, and she's talked about how several of you since last year, and you've started doing it this year, you've used the idea of cubing a word problem. Now, I'll be honest, I have never used this. I remember seeing that many years ago, but in 6th grade, we never used it. But if this is what's helping you, I am more than happy to use the idea of cubing a word problem. So I've created this. I've printed it out for each of you to have a half sheet. Keep it in your math folders, keep it in your math books, and you'll have it. And I will try my best to remember to use this pattern when we are looking through word problems. So the C tells us that we need to circle any of the numbers and units that we have in our story problem. So let's read the word problem first. The table shows the dimensions of 3 rectangular picture frame sizes that Martina is making. How much wood is needed to make 2 small frames and 3 large frames? The perimeter of a rectangle is 2L plus 2W, where L is the length and W is the width. All right, and then we have our chart. So some key numbers and terms. I'm making 2 small frames and 3 large frames. Those are pretty important. Okay? I can see my length and my width. Those are key terms in units, right? Because the units, it tells me it's in inches. And since we're talking about small and large, I need the 3 and the 5 and the 8 and the 10. All right. Underline the question. Well, what is the question? Okay, I see the question mark. So how much wood is needed? Well, that would be in inches, right? Because we're measuring in inches. All right, so how much wood is needed? I need to underline that. Let's see, clue words. Well, it says perimeter of a rectangle. I know what a rectangle is, so that's pretty important, right? And I'm talking about length and width, and those are definitely clue words because those let me know what I'm measuring. And then it says to evaluate. What am I doing? Well, once again, I'm finding perimeter. And we talked about perimeter earlier this week, right? Perimeter is the distance all the way around a shape. And it could be a square, it could be a rectangle, it could be a triangle, it could be a dodecagon. And then we marked in the back of the book where we had 2L plus 2W. And then we wrote it could be side plus side plus side plus side. or it could be L plus L plus W plus W. So if I know what we're talking about, then I need to think and try to imagine what that would look like, right? So we have two different rectangular frames here, right? And once again, we're talking about a rectangle, four-sided shape, top and bottom are equal, left and right are equal. We're talking about the distance all the way around. Okay, so perimeter. So I got an idea of what I'm supposed to be doing. All right, so it says to evaluate and eliminate, what steps am I doing? Yes. What information don't I need? Well, I'm not using that medium, right? So cross out the medium. It's there to confuse me. I don't need it. I don't even want to see it. All right, so then the S in cubes. Solve and show your, okay, solve and show my work. So I know I have to find measurements for small, and there are two of those. Well, I also have to find the measurements for large, and there are three of those. All right, so I'm going to basically have two of these that I have to solve. Okay, so let's just focus in on the two small. So I'm going to use a formula, right? So on both of those, I have the formula 2L. Well, that's a coefficient and a variable. That means multiplication, right? So 2 times L plus 2 times W. But we said there were two of the small. So let's write that as 2, because there are two small frames, times. So I'm going to put it in parentheses, and I want to find what the perimeter is for each of those frames. All right, so that's the 2L plus 2W. All right. So once I do that, now I can look at my chart, and I see on the smalls that my L, my length, is 3, and my W, my width, is 5. So a coefficient and a variable, once again, is always multiplication. So I want to rewrite my math problem now. I just bring down the 2, I bring down the parentheses, but inside now, I want to show that what I'm talking about is 2 times 3. I bring down the addition sign, and then I'm showing that I'm talking about 2 times 5. Now that I've gotten to that point, I've thought about it, I've worked through it, I've marked it up. Now I have really just basic math to do, and I can do that. So I'm going to follow my order of operations, and I'm going to do my multiplication that's inside my parentheses. So going from left to right, I have 2 times 3, and 2 times 3 is 6. And then I have 2 times 5, and 2 times 5 is 10. I bring down my other information. So I bring down the 2, I bring down my parentheses, I bring down my addition. As for several extra presents, I still have parentheses I need to solve for inside my parentheses. So 6 plus 10 is 16. I bring down those parentheses because if I just bring down the 2, I end up with 216, and then I'm going to have a whole lot of extra wood, right? So I bring down those parentheses because once again, a number touching parentheses is telling me to multiply. And then when I pick up my handy dandy calculator, 16 times 2, well, that's 32. 32 what? Oh yeah, so those labels were inches. So I have 32 inches. So I need 32 inches of wood to make two small frames, but now I need to do the large frames. So I want to fill in the same information. So this time I have a 3 in front, and I know my formula, it's going to go inside my parentheses, is 2L plus the 2W. And the information they give me in my chart, they say my length is 8 and my width is 10. All right, so for the large, I have my new math problem, 2 times, in parentheses, 2 times 8 plus 2 times 10, closing my parentheses. Once again, I'm back to basic math. I can do that. So I'm going to do my multiplication inside my parentheses from left to right. And 2 times 6 is 8, or 2 times 8 is 16, and 2 times 10 is 20. I bring everything else down. So now I have 3 times, in parentheses, 16 plus 20. Well, in parentheses, 16 plus 20 is 36. So 3 times 36, that's 72. And once again, it's the same measurement, inches. So how much wood do I need? Well, I just put those together, right? 72 plus 32 is going to give me 2 and 2 is 4, 7 and 3 is 10, 104. 104 what? 104 inches. So I need 104 inches in boards. Notice I didn't square it because I didn't multiply. I'm not finding area. I'm just finding perimeter, which is length. So I just keep my straight measurement. All right, so if you want to work ahead, and see if you can do this one without me, then please do so, and then replay it and see if you get the right answer. If you just want to follow step by step with me, it'll take a couple more minutes. It'll be about a 25-minute video, but you're more than welcome to just follow along. So whichever way you prefer is fine. First, we're going to start by reading the information. At a garage sale, Georgia found some used DVDs and CDs that she wanted to buy. Each DVD cost $3 and each CD cost $2. She also has the option of paying $25 for the entire box of DVDs and CDs. Evaluate the expression 3D plus 2C when D is equal to 4 and C is equal to 7 to find the cost of 4 DVDs and 7 CDs. What is the difference between the cost of buying the entire box and buying the items individually? So we're going to cube this one to make sure that we have all the important information and see if there's anything we can just get rid of. So we first start by circling any numbers and units that we need. So I know DVDs are $3. So I have a DVD, that's a unit because that's a specific item. The dollar sign is a unit and the number 3 is important. I'm also going to circle the CD, which is $2. So I need to know specifically the CDs. It's a dollar sign and the number 2. Let's see, my question, underline the question. What is the difference between the cost of buying the entire box and buying the items individually? So that tells me that I need to have a cost for the entire box, which they give me, and a cost for buying them all individually. And then I need to find a difference between them. All right, so when I see each, I know that each of the DVDs, so these are my clue words, is $3, and each of the CDs is $2. I also see the word different, so that implies when I'm actually answering the question that I'm going to be subtracting, right? Hopefully you knew that one. All right, so the orange, evaluate. So I'm just evaluate. The expression means to solve the math problem. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm also going to look at the idea that I have an option of paying $25 for the entire box. So I know that's going to be applied at the end, right? I'm going to do a comparison and find the difference. So if I start with the math problem they tell me to evaluate, I have 3D plus 2C. And if I plug in the information they give me, then I know that I have $3 times, right? Because I have a number, a coefficient, and a letter, a variable. Those touching is multiplication, $3 for a DVD, and I bought 4 DVDs, so I have 3 times 4. And I'm adding that to, let's see, 2C, the CDs were $2 each. That's what the 2 is, and it tells me there are 7 of them. So I'm going to take 2 times 7. Now I'm just going to multiply them from left to right. Addition in the middle, so I can skip that. So 3 times 4 is 12, and 2 times 7 is 14. I bring down my addition. Easy math. 12 plus 14 is 26. $26, right? Okay, so if I have $26, have I answered the question? No. So once again, the question is now, what is the difference if I spend $26 individually or I just buy the entire box? And once again, the entire box, that's the $25. So if I take 26 minus 25, then I have $1. So my answer becomes that Georgia would save $1. Hopefully it's not too difficult. If you paused it and came back, hopefully you found the right answer. And if you didn't, then please ask. Once again, as you're doing your assignment, please let me know if you're having questions. It's just evaluating algebraic equations or expressions, excuse me. Algebraic, once again, just means letters. Expressions means it's a math problem that I don't have an answer for, so I'm going to solve it. That's what evaluation tells me. Make sure you follow your order of operations each and every time. Remember, it's posted around in 2 sections on the board. Over to the left is the entire image, and over to the right, I've written down the letters on the math line. So your assignment is the evens on the front page, 2 through 12, and on the back, you're going to do the evens also. Notice on 18, I've kind of covered up one of those words, but there are 2 things you're being asked on question 18. You are to compare and you are to contrast the 2, and it's supposed to be a written sentence. Now, I've printed these off where you have more space to do your work, so you're more than welcome to do it in your book if you can do it neatly, but I think most of you are going to benefit with the extended assignment. All right, if you have any questions, please let us know, and we are here to help you.